Okay, so for part two of the request sent in by Flashgator, we have Wolflord Rose, Malcador admits his fears to the Emperor. Now, just by checking out the description, I know that this is from the short story The Board is Set. And this was a very, not a fun conversation for Malcador. In any case, we're going to go ahead and watch this, and we'll see what his thoughts are on it.
Hey everyone, Wolflord Rowe here. Oh, do we have a good one today. Malcador and the Emperor. I've said it before and I'll say it again and again. There are no better moments in all of the lore than the moments we get of the Emperor and Malcador simply talking together. Today, we are looking at the Emperor and Malcador engaging in a game of tactics, playing out the events of the heresy against each other as they await the arrival of Horus and the traitor forces. Spoiler warning to begin, the events we are covering today are from the short story The Board is Set. And as always, I really recommend you read this novel for yourself first. Not only do you get the most enjoyment out of it this way, but we help to support the Great Black Library and Games Workshop. And I really have to say that this short story is an absolute must read for fans of the Emperor and Malcador. But with that said, let's jump straight in. So as I said, these events are taking place with the War Master Horus and his traitors possibly mere hours away from arriving in the solar system and the Battle of Terra beginning. Malcador is feeling the stress of the moment, having visibly aged more so than ever before. The Warp Heralds had it right. Their psychic clarions were not just an announcement, they were a challenge from the darkness itself. Here is our champion, they cried. Kneel before him or perish. Not Dawn nor Vulcan, Sanguinius nor Jagatai would beat Horus, not now that his ascension was almost complete. Together? Perhaps. But Horus, for all the weakness in his soul now exposed, was not a fool. He had always demonstrated the ability to set the field to his need, making victory look easy. The challenge was for one alone, the one that made him. The thought agitated Malcador. Ever since the collapse of the Webway endeavour, his hopes for mankind had been eroded. There was only one that could defeat Horus, and only one that Horus wanted to defeat. And Horus had never picked a fight he could not win. Shoulders hunched, jaw clenched, Malcador sped his descent, a clammy fist of foreboding gripping his heart. What an interesting insight into Malcador's thoughts this is. This is the right hand of the Emperor, the voice of the Emperor and the Imperium. And here we see how deep his fears have become. He knows for all the strength that the remaining loyalist Primarchs on Terra have, they cannot defeat Horus. Not as he is now at least. And that this fight must come down to the Emperor and Horus, and that troubles him. Because Horus would never challenge the Emperor if he couldn't win. For the first time in his life, however many countless decades and centuries it must have been, Malcador is facing the unknown. I'm sure we've all been there. Whether you're nervous about something or something tragic or terrible has happened or it's about to. And that feeling in the pit of your stomach that you get, that dread. Malcador here, despite all of his power, still very much human like the rest of us.
Now, Malcador was no slouch when it came to being powerful, and anybody that knows anything about 40k knows this. He was the third most powerful psyker in existence, after the Emperor, of course, and Magnus. He had brought Horus to his knees at one point. He had literally taken Horus and almost killed him, and actually threatened to wipe him out of existence. But even him right now, considering everything that's going on, is nervous about the upcoming fight. and he doesn't know if he can do it anymore. Actually, this was said in another story where he basically didn't know if he had the power anymore, if he had the ability to single-handedly take down a Primarch, and much less Horus.
And this can be seen when they begin the game. Having finished arranging the Primarch's characters to their respective sides, Malcador as the War Master has the first turn. Yet his hands hesitate over the model, the Lord of Hearts, Horus. What has occurred cannot be changed, he announced. We have played it out 100 times. Humour me. The traitors are on their way. They will be in the solar system before we finish. We do not have time. Revelation sat back, hands folded in his lap. Then why did you come? He asked. Am I to be a distraction from your woes? I wish to find answers, as ever, said Malcador. I seek your wisdom, your insight. Why? It was such an unexpected question that the Regent had no reply for a short while. He looked into the inscrutable expression of his lord and wondered if he already knew the answer. Revelation sat impassive, the embodiment of patience. Malcador swallowed hard, confession welling up inside. I am afraid. He picked up the Lord of Hearts. The figure seemed so noble. It does not start with that piece, said Revelation. What is the cause of your fear? This time the answer came swiftly and
see if he
easily.
caught that.
Failing you, said the Sigillite. Not death? If I am dead, I am beyond regret. To live with failure would be a torment. Would it reassure you to know that if you fail to defeat Horus, your regret will be short-lived? One might even say fleeting. An instant or an eternity makes no difference. Play, insisted the Lord of Terror. And there we have Malcador voicing his fear, in acceptance as much to himself as to the Emperor. He is afraid. The Regent of Terror, second most powerful man in all the Imperium, is afraid. Afraid of failing the Emperor, of his flaws allowing the Emperor and the Imperium to lose. He doesn't fear death, but failing and having to live with that, even if it's but for a mere moment, knowing everything that it cost, would be unbearable. And the Emperor here, you get the sense he knows what his friend is feeling, and of course he probably does, and gets him to talk about it, in a very matter-of-fact Emperor type fashion of course, but still. If you don't want to play, then why did you come? Why do you want my opinion? What are you afraid of? And when Malcador states failing you, he replies, not death? Almost surprised he's not just scared of dying, that this is the end. And then even an attempt at comforting him with, would it reassure you to know that if you fail to defeat Horus, your regret will be short-lived? Don't worry, it's like don't worry about it, mate. If we fail, we're dead anyway. It's kind of amusing when you think about it, but that's actually the kind of thing you'd say to one of your mates in that situation.
Pretty much.
What's the worst that could happen? We screw up, we're dead anyway. It's really interesting to see the Emperor kind of react in that way. So they begin to play, and each move follows the events of the heresy.
Okay, he didn't mention it. He if he caught it, he didn't bring it up in this video. So, when the Emperor saw Malcador playing the King of Hearts, which was Horus, he said that's not the first card, which says one of two things in this. One, either he had figured out by that point that, and that little chime was just letting me know that the first video in this series finished processing and I didn't pause it in time. Either he had figured out by that point that the word bearers were the ones that had caused all this. Either he had figured that out, or he still assumed that Magnus had utterly betrayed him. So, That's completely up in the air.
Has already happened, with Malcador making a comment about the Emperor always cheating, that he controls the cards. The Emperor, as enigmatic as ever, offers a "do I? Or just does it look like that?" kind of reply. Before asking, if you think I cheat, then why do you always insist on playing me? Because you have never yet shown me the final play. You always end the game before a victor has been decided. Malcador cleared his throat. We have run out of time. If you have a plan, it is now that you must reveal it. What if I told you that I did not know how to win? You are more powerful than Horus, even now. That is not what I said. Sometimes I play the game as War Master and you are the Emperor. It does not change the game. And this, I believe, is a very truthful comment by the Emperor. What if I told you that I did not know how to win? His grand plan has failed. With Magnus ruining the Webway project, the Emperor's grand plan, countless centuries in the planning, has been ruined. I think he doesn't know what to do, the right course of action to take. But Malcador doesn't quite understand the scope of the Emperor's words.
I'm going to make this a point when I do my video on Magnus. This is a point that I've made in that. It was only after what happened where Magnus ruined the Webway project that the Emperor, the first time he had to face the mistakes that he had made in the course of the Great Crusade up to that point. The way he had been with the Primarchs. And we see that in the last video that I covered about what Wolflord Rowe is talking about. It's one of the first times he actually called one of the Primarchs his sons, and that was Alfarius. But this is... He realized at the point where Magnus breached the Webway and then all of a sudden everything was in jeopardy, that he had made some serious errors in judgment.
He's not saying he can't defeat Horus. He's saying he doesn't know how to win against chaos. His plan has been ruined, and ever since then he has been having to react and having to defend the portal against chaos. I think in this moment in time the Emperor does not quite know what to do. Now in 10,000 years, when a certain Primarch returns and meets him in his throne room, well, he might have just formulated a plan by then. Maybe. But here, the most powerful human in all of existence, the Emperor of mankind, is being very human, not knowing what to do. Their game continues with Malcador using Fulgrim to kill Ferrus, enabling the little Ferrus Manus comment I spoke about in my previous upload. So if you haven't watched that, then be sure to go check that one out. And it continues to follow along the events of the Heresy, with Angron and Lorgar attacking Guilliman, the Lion and Curzon fighting each other, Sanguinius facing temptation, and then there's a very interesting what-if scenario, with Malcador questioning why Dawn was never moved from Terra. Several of Revelation's pieces were now surrounded, with only one avenue of escape. Malcador indicated an angle from Revelation's home spaces where the invincible bastion was held in reserve, having been returned there in the opening turns. I do not understand why you never play that move. The Regent pointed to a position behind the Lord of Hearts that would see his capital piece trapped against its own companions. I shall indulge you this time, said Revelation, as he moved the invincible bastion up to the Lord of Hearts. He nodded for Malcador to turn the next card. He took the sliver of crystal and turned it over. The face clouded, turned into a bluish green, and then resolved into the shape of a hydra. At the same time, both of the twins turned red, joining the War Master. Immediately Malcador saw that he could move one of them into the space that had been occupied by the invincible bastion, forcing a capitulation. Now you cheat on my behalf. Malcador's indignity raised the briefest of smiles from Revelation. Whatever made you think there was only one Hydra card? Now, this is a great little passage for a couple of reasons. Firstly, Alfarius and Omegon are on the board as twins, so we can remove the theory of the Emperor and Malcador not knowing that Alfarius had a twin brother. Yes, it was a secret, but it was clearly a secret that the Emperor and Malcador were fully aware of. The Emperor designed all of his Primarchs to fulfill a role. Alfarius is no different in that regard. I've always been a little confused by the theory of the Emperor not knowing of the twins.
Yeah,
I mean, he had them in incubators and genetically engineered them himself. Of course he would have known about it. And secondly, it's very clearly stated here that had Dawn left Terra and gone to confront Horus himself, the Alpha Legion would have taken Terra straight away. I guess for all the Alfarius' loyal fans out there, that could have been the victory they needed. But it also shows the Emperor was very aware of Alfarius being active in the solar system. So he must be aware of his death at the hands of Dawn also. The game continues with Russ versus Magnus and Sanguinius, Gilliman and the Lion chasing off Lorgar and Angron. And then Kurz causing havoc before being captured. Korax roamed free but had his power curtailed by the Doubt card. It seems as though the Emperor is playing to lose with the War Master having the advantage before it becomes apparent that Malcador has been slowly encircled by the Loyalists and his only real option is to attack Terra directly. Again mimicking real events until something happens that hasn't happened before. The Emperor has a handful of cards yet unplayed. Malcador has just one. And so he lays it down upon Mortarion. But for the first time, it's something new. Corruption. Which, as we know, is Nurgle corrupting Mortarion and the Death Guard. But this is a major divergence from every single time they have played before, and immediately engrosses the Emperor back into the game, whereas he was merely going through the motions before. He was wrapped now, eyes moving from one piece to the next, fingertips pushing down into the table, the immaculate fingernails pale against the lacquered wood. "What has happened?" asked Malcador. "Play on." Revelation did not look up. "The game has changed. Why have you changed it?" Malcador felt a yawning gulf opening up in front of him. It was for answers that he had come, but suddenly he was wary of that knowledge. In truth, he had expected everything that had passed so far. Perhaps he had simply been seeking comfort in the familiar exchanges before everything would be thrown into the anarchy of war. What does it mean? Revelation broke his attention from the pieces, and for just a moment Malcador thought he saw a hint of sadness. It was gone in a heartbeat. Perhaps had never been there at all, replaced by a flinty glare. Revelation barely moved his lips as he spoke, teeth gritted as his eyes bored into the High Lord of Terror, each word enunciated sharply. Play on. Malcador's next moves were half-hearted, playing for time as he tried to assimilate the events of the last few minutes. "You are not trying hard enough, War Master," said Revelation, eyes flashing with anger. "If you do not win, you are damned." The Regent paled, not sure whether his master referred to him literally or in his adopted role. He was never sure how much Revelation really knew.
Yeah, this is the thing. The Emperor didn't know, but Mortarian's corruption was a kind of a new thing for them to understand. And it might have been that the changing in the Death Guard made it possible for the Emperor to do even the little bit that he did. But at the same time, I'm going to have to... The last book is going to show a lot. In any case, here we go.
Or had known of the events that had spiraled since Horus had stepped from the path of loyalty. He had the maddening ability to appear both informed and enigmatic in equal measure, but at that moment, the affection, if it could be called such a thing, did not irritate Malcador as before, but terrified him. His gut shriveled at the notion that Revelation was moving into uncharted waters, as ignorant of the outcome as the rest of them. He had thought the game would be a way for the embattled Emperor to impart his plan for the defense of Terra, and ultimately, the defeat of Horus. It had not been the first time Malcador had received guidance through the cards, allowing his master to contact him whilst remaining focused on the task upon the Golden Throne. Now the Regent watched the immortal ruler of humanity intently studying each move, and realised that the game might well be the means by which Revelation would devise his strategy. And oh, what a cliffhanger to end it. I was going to cover it all in one upload, but when I started breaking it down, there's just so much to talk about. There really is. And what a moment to finish it with. The Emperor and Malcador in uncharted territory here. But man, what a short story this is. Any scene with Malcador and the Emperor is always some of the best moments of the heresy. It really is, and this is no exception. I have to say, Malcador is really my MVP of the Horus Heresy series. Such a fantastic character. God, I wish he could come back to the 40k timeline. But hey, he is a perpetual after all, right? I doubt we'll ever get told the truth and the full history of the Emperor and Malcador, but it's great that we have a character like Malcador that shows us the Emperor in a light different to anybody else. The closest thing to a best friend that the Emperor could ever have. But what did you guys think of this? Surprised to see the fear in Malcador after all this time? And the Emperor's reaction to that? Almost comforting his friend? How about Dawn being kept on Terra during the heresy by the Emperor to counter Alpharius and the Alpha Legion? Do you think he knew Dawn would kill him? And then of course the big one, the uncharted waters going forward. I can't wait to continue this with more breakdown in the next upload. As always guys, drop your thoughts in the comments below.
Well, the Emperor, after what happened with Magnus, he was flying blind for the most part. He still didn't know where some people were gonna fall in line. He still didn't know where certain things were gonna happen. It's my personal opinion that he was fighting against a timetable. He always knew something like this was going to wind up happening, but he thought he had beaten the curve. In any case, I'm gonna catch you guys later on the next one for Wolf Lord Row, and I'll see you then.